January 20th, 2020. Roll call, please.
Mayor Berman?
Here.
Trustee Gambino?
Here.
Trustee Lowry?
Here.
Trustee Curtis? Here. Trustee Carroll?
Here.
Trustee Martinez?
Here.
Trustee Gately?
Here.
Now, Randy Mueller, you'd like to speak. Would you like to speak after we've had some discussion by the, or do you want to speak now?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and introduce the case real quick. This item might look familiar. On November 18th, we discussed at the Committee of the Whole with a concept plan. This item has since gone to the Plan Commission in January, January 7th to be more specific, with a full recommendation for approval. Go ahead and let the developer go through his slides, and I'll finish with some zoning information about the zoning request. So.
Good evening, Mayor Berman, trustees, village administration. My name is Ed Roberts. I represent the development group from Randall Crossings, the hotel, the townhomes, and the newer mixed-use project we discussed in early November. I just wanted to walk you back through and review what we're talking about and looking at as an opportunity. This would be a 3-story structure, combination, transitional, commercial retail, and studio and 1 bedrooms, a total of 28 units, approximately 2,800 square feet of the commercial retail space, located on Lot 3, which is directly south of the hotel. The only other item I'd like to discuss is we are looking into adding a basement area. We are in the initial stages of evaluating the cost of a basement versus just going with the slab on grade and moving forward with the project. We're probably going to know in the next week or so. I would think certainly by next Thursday or Friday what that's going to look like and how we would move forward. It would not change the footprint of the building at all. If we did add the basement, it would allow us to move some storage downstairs and add a couple of studios, and we do have sufficient parking to make that happen at 2 spaces per unit. So we would go from 67 to 71 spaces and just cap it at 2 additional studios. And again, I'll continue to work with Steve and Mike and communicate with them on how we're coming along. But again, I don't see that as too much of a major modification within the building. So uses, again, still a cafe for the larger space. And again, I don't know if it's going to be some office space or what the other 1,200 square feet may come in with. So I just wanted to go back over the project with you and answer any questions if there are any.
I'll kind of pick up from there. In order to make this development happen, there are a few things that need to happen. The first being the special use to allow for a major change in a PUD. The preliminary plan for this property basically laid out about a several thousand square foot standalone building. In order to accommodate the additional residential on this property, we now are introducing residential with the 28 units and the 2,800 square feet of retail or commercial, which is a permitted use. But in order to allow that residential component, we need to amend the PUD to allow the additional zoning use. Also a part of that, the building height is capped in the B2 underlying zoning district at 35 feet. They are actually requesting a building height of 38 feet. The additional building height incorporates some parapeting, which per the zoning ordinance design standards is actually recommended. Also, too, the elevator shaft is not shown on the elevation plan, which I will pull up here in a second. In any case, what we're looking to do in the PUD is just insinuate that the elevator shaft is a permitted encroachment into the additional building height. According to the architect, though, that might not be an issue. Also, too, and I apologize for the transition here, the site plan itself has a setback dimension. Now, the setbacks all actually meet code. My interpretation was that the front yard off of Ritter Street here had a front yard setback, and in that case, the overall setback with the additional 13 feet of setback would be 48 feet, and they're proposing a 17-foot setback to the south. Now, when we went through the planning exercise with the petitioner, it was actually staff's recommendation that the building be pushed to the south. This is actually to allow more shared parking within the development, provide proper spacing between the buildings. You have the townhomes to the northwest of this, the hotel to the north, and then the turf room to the northeast. So the point being to push the building down and then have some centralized parking where it could create a shared parking environment. So the setback request is actually a result of us pushing the building further to the south. We are requesting site plan approval or some feedback on the site plan at this time, as we would come back with a site plan approval and ordinance at a later date. I mentioned in the staff report that there is a conflict with an easement on the property. As a result of that, we would just need to reconform the easement at a later date through a plat of abrogation, meaning we would just reconfigure the way the easement is on the property. That is actually shown in the staff report here as part of the lot of subdivision here. So again, the request being in front of us, which has gone to Plan Commission, would be to allow for the residential use, the additional building height, the additional setback along the southern portion of the property, and also to the site plan approval. So if you have any questions at this point in time, we'd be happy to help answer those.
Yeah, I do. I have a question. How long will the project take to complete?
Randy?
Probably 6 to 8 months.
And when you're looking to start?
I think we're probably going to start mid-April.
We have to come back before the village board with a formal annexation amendment, which requires a notification. So I envision final entitlement work coming back at the second meeting of February.
Do you have renters lined up? Do you think that, obviously that's an area where we could use some more affordable housing? I mean,
We'll typically start marketing 4 months into the project, about halfway through.
Have you had any feedback about the cafe? Anybody interested there?
We are discussing with a couple of different folks that would be an opportunity for that. It's initial, but we are in talks.
so 600 square feet, that's like a one bedroom and a bathroom?
For the one bedrooms, I believe.
695 square feet.
Yes, correct,
So it's one bedroom and like a kitchen and a bath.
correct.
The studio is just one room?
One room.
I'm good with it.
I'm fine with the changes myself.
All right, thank you.
Any other?
I don't have any problem with it.
I know we haven't in the past, and certainly it's gone through the Planning Commission. I'm sure they asked plenty of questions.
Yes, sir.
Well, is there anything else, Mike, that you need from?
No, thank you for your feedback.
Sounds like it's a go from that standpoint.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, very good.
All right, item number 2, Michael.
Give me 1 second, please.
It's a lot of text.
Hey, it looked a lot bigger when I did it on my computer. Item number 2, we'll be discussing the North Aurora Batavia Boundary Agreement. As part of the comprehensive plan that was approved in 2015, part of the goal of the comprehensive plan was to renew all of the boundary line agreements with the neighboring municipalities. As a result, we re-upped the Sugar Grove boundary agreement and also the Aurora boundary agreement last year. The Aurora boundary agreement was for a temporary one-year basis, which we're bringing back at a later point. The latest amendment to the Batavia boundary line agreement was in February of 2003, so it was a 20-year term. So at this point in time, we're a little ahead of the curve, but what we want to do is sort of consolidate our boundary agreements, so that way 20 years from now, or if there's a shorter date, that we would bring it back and have all those discussions at once. We can make sure all of the lines sort of coincide with one another. And I'll be pulling up a map here in a second, kind of going through it, but the boundary line itself is the northern portion of North Aurora. It extends from Hart Road at the east to the west to Bliss Road. The previous boundary agreement only went as far west as Randall Road. Mainly, I'm assuming because a lot of those properties were already incorporated on the northern boundary of North Aurora, but we did take it all the way to Hart Road in this case, just for clarity. The actual boundary agreement itself has been amended. So we had a formal boundary line with Batavia that's actually being changed, so that way we're including an additional acreage into the village of North Aurora, which we've been negotiating over the last year with them. So when compared to the previous boundary with Batavia, now we're taking in an additional around 800 acres of land, which would basically be on the village's northwest quadrant, consisting of vacant farmland and forest preserve property, some of which is not developable land. The portion actually includes what we refer to in the map and this discussion as the option area. There's about 200 acres north of CV Road that, through discussions with Batavia, we kind of just left it as the first municipality to get that would actually come to the table with the ability to service with utilities and an actual development plan would get rights to those properties first. And as part of the agreement with Batavia right now, that would expire after 10 years. So if no action occurs that 10 years, that property would then go back to the Batavia side of the boundary line, again, CV Road, which I'll be showing in a second here. That area can be annexed on a parcel by parcel basis. Again, through any boundary exercise, I know this came up during the last one with Sugar Grove, these aren't necessary. We don't have to have a boundary line with the neighboring municipalities. But what it does, it helps the respective communities sort of have future land use planning and future capital planning as well to service those areas. This actually did go to the Committee of the Whole with the City of Batavia on January 14th, and they did concur with the boundary line as proposed. So if you give me 1 second, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the boundary map.
And while Mike's looking at that, the one other thing to note is when we redid ours with Sugar Grove, it had several years. I think it had 16 years left on it at that time. And this one we have 3 years. Part of the reason why we're redoing them now with Batavia and Sugar Grove is because the three communities overlapped each other in these areas, and it was really confusing because some towns have the rights to other lands before other towns, and so what we ended up doing was we created 3 specific lines where Sugar Grove now has a delineated stopping point between us and them, and Batavia would have a stopping point between us and them, and Sugar Grove and Batavia would have a stopping point. So we've almost layered a cake, so we all know that we have no overlapping rights to the land. Like, we all stop at one spot on a geographic map.
Yeah, so just to kind of pick where Steve left off was, if you'll notice the boundary lines, the purple line being the proposed line with the City of Batavia, the orange line being the approved boundary line with Sugar Grove, and then the south or green line would be the boundary line with the City of Aurora. As you can tell here, they all sort of connect, and that way the village is fully encapsulated. Just for reference's sake, any property that you see here that does not have a color is considered unincorporated. The reddish color here is the current incorporated lines of the City of Batavia. Blue being the village of North Aurora, and then to the south, the yellow properties represent the City of Aurora. I mentioned in the brief presentation that the boundary line, which once was in this area here with the City of Batavia, now we would incur all of this area here as part of our boundary with Sugar Grove and Batavia. The option area being right here It's showing 211 acres of gross acreage. I did some calculations based upon some floodplain associated with the Lake Run drainage ditch. There's probably a good 150 acres of developable land up there. And again, it's more on a first-come, first-served basis between North Aurora and the city of Batavia. The city of Batavia can actually jump the forest preserve to incorporate that, but as of right now, they do not have plans to go into this territory here. And again, that would expire in 10 years. So after a 10-year period, this land would revert back to the city of Batavia boundary line.
And it should be pointed out, when Mike says that it can jump, the area that can jump is currently unincorporated. It's not in the city of Batavia. So to even get to that area in the first 10 years, Batavia would have to annex Heritage Woods, that whole
believe so, yes.
subdivision that's in that unshaded area. And then that light shaded area around the purple is Forest Preserve property.
Is what?
Forest Preserve property, Kane County Forest Preserve.
You know, and as part of this too, what we're looking to do is, once we have all of our boundary agreements established, the city of Aurora might be, again, this year for the full 20-year term. But what I would like to do is, once they're all established, is go back, revisit the comp plan, revisit these lands that are now within our boundary for some sort of future land use designation. So that way we have an idea based upon adequate capital and infrastructure abilities to service those areas to see what kind of land use would be appropriate for them. So we're reaching out most likely to the firms that have been working on the comprehensive plan. So at this time, it's just for up for discussion. If you have any questions or concerns or comments, feel free to ask.
Who owns the land now? It's unincorporated?
It's unincorporated.
Both the reddish and the yellowish? Okay.
So I'll go to another map here.
So it's county, it's serviced by the county,
Yeah.
whatever the
Service
farmland.
through most likely, you know, an unincorporated property, well, septic. This map I want to show you as well. This area represents the existing boundary line with the city of Batavia. So anywhere in this area here would be the area that would be coming into the village of North Aurora, minus some of like the Dick Yarn Forest Preserve and the Lake Run Forest Preserve properties.
Can those land areas be developed, Mike?
Yes.
And but there's no infrastructure there now, correct?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
But the village, one of the reasons why the city of Batavia has worked well with us on this is we have infrastructure that's stubbed in the subdivisions to the northwest. So we actually have water and streets that are ready to rock in that area, if you will, off of Remington Landing and Tanner Trails and Mirador. And then Batavia doesn't have any of that infrastructure in the ground yet. So what happens is once again, this doesn't mean that this is part of North Aurora. This just gives us the opportunity, if a developer comes into that area in the next 20 years and they want to develop, they have to annex to North Aurora. They don't have the option to annex to Batavia. They can only annex to us. And so that, like he said earlier, that allows us to do planning and whatnot, make sure that we zone that area for future land use in a way that we know if someone comes in, it's not going to be warehousing, maybe it's only residential homes.
So what school district and park district would that be? Ours?
I'd have to look.
Yeah.
You know what, we have on our website right now, the GIS maps might show it, but it's going to be tough because that could be the Canelan School District in some of that area, and it could be 129. They intersect right at that northwest corner, and we do have some homes in the Canelan District right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like the Remington, that corner of Remington is Canelan.
That's Canelan, yeah.
And a small portion that sticks out in Tanner off of Sturkle, I believe it is in Canelan as well. Or Bartram. It's one of those streets right out there.
The property, the parcel south of that's in Sugar Grove, that's all unincorporated too, correct?
Yeah, so
Currently.
I don't have I don't have the map with incorporated Sugar Grove. I'm assuming that this is all actually unincorporated this time. So Sugar Grove is not that far to the east, because this would represent the area of Sugar Grove that's actually incorporated right here.
Okay. So anything south of 88?
At this time, yes. But they would have anything to the west of this orange boundary line, which was approved, I believe it was January of last year.
Steve, when you were talking about that 211 acres being, ready to rock and roll, but the city of Batavia is aware of that. have we expressed our intention to annex it? I mean, where is it?
No, the village wouldn't annex this unless we actually went to the homeowners and asked them if they wanted to annex directly into North Aurora. Under an agreement like this, it just sits as unincorporated land until someone approaches either village and says, we have a developer interested in buying this farmland. Who would we annex into if we don't want well and septic? And then we would have the rights to annex it into North Aurora first. That area, that 200, so that's, to make this clear, that 10-year option area, which is what I think you were specifically talking about,
Right.
north of CV, essentially, no one has infrastructure yet that's there. Okay, so that area is not stubbed out. We can only touch the areas that are in the yellow hash marked. That purple hashed area, we have property close to it. So to put it this way, water main for us would be much closer because Batavia's water main isn't until you get to that pink and that salmon colored shaded area. That's how far away their water is, where ours is anywhere where it's blue. We already have water there, so it's much closer.
I would just like to see, what we could do to ensure that we are able to acquire these properties, because I think, I'd like to see us expand our footprint if possible and see the rooftops. I mean, that's what we hear from all our businesses.
agree.
Is we need to increase our rooftops, and I'd hate to see, these valuable parcels not become an asset to the village.
Well, I think the agreement of saying whoever gets there first is a good agreement because, we've gone through the same type of thing with them on that property that Joe Keim owns that is not, it's not in Batavia. True. And they were able to prevent him from annexing to North Aurora. But I think in this case, for us to get to the 211 acres, we have to annex part of that 804.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
You would want to
But
annex it in so we can put our
804
infrastructure
acres
in.
is probably going to be easier to annex than all that property from the 211 acres all the way over to Randall Road.
Through
Or
Forest
all the way
Preserve.
up to Main Street, just about. Because all that is not in, none of that is in Batavia.
It's a matter of tact, really. So if you really want the land, something we could pursue. Sometimes the issue is that if you proactively annex a property, you kind of give some of the rights, unless you're able to draft something into an annexation agreement. You kind of have to give a little bit in way to take the properties in. Whereas if you're approached with a development, which is more the natural way of doing it, you could actually work through the contract to actually, if there's any stipulations that the village would want. But we could certainly look into the ability to annex to the north.
Looks good.
Well, I think it's a lot better than what we had before, and I think straightening out with Sugar Grove, which is already done, and getting an agreement from Batavia for this part of it is, I think, a super negotiation on our part. And I look for it to be a real benefit to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the course of action would be to actually hold the public hearing, which I'm assuming may be the first meeting in March, given the actual notification requirements. So you'll be looking for it at that point.
Are we in concurrence,
Yeah,
basically?
I think so.
All right,
Thank you.
very good.
Very good.
We have no executive session. I entertain a motion to adjourn for the evening.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're out of here.
All right, then.
That was good.
That wasn't too bad.